All right, we should be. There we go. Now we're live.
Yeah.
Hello.
We're back.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, man.
So our talking point tonight was pretty much determined based upon some events of the past week and conversations we had and so forth. And we're going to move away. We talked about moving away from current events because we're just so inundated. Everything's political.
Yeah.
The only current events that we really have, unless an alien comes down, Rocco, is going to be related to politics. I don't know about you. We got to give it a rest, at least until the elections.
I agree. I'm totally on board with that, man. We can talk about puppies and rainbows. Yes, definitely.
Well, much of what's been on both of our radars, coincidentally, we'll share this with the audience, has been the influence that our parenting styles have had over the years with our own children.
Yeah.
And the growth we've seen in our children and so forth.
Yeah.
We were talking outside this show. What an interesting topic, because there's so many opinions on parenting. There's so many opinions on, what kids see, what they don't see, what they should be exposed to, what they shouldn't be exposed to. Should you let your kids feel pain? Should you protect them? And I love a lot of the attitude that you bring to your parenting, especially with, I was able to see with Gabe.
Yeah.
I know you're extremely proud of that.
Absolutely.
And I just want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on parenting, because Rocco's got the spectrum. He's got like a 22-year-old,
22, yeah, 14 and 10.
10.
Yep.
Okay.
Whole spectrum, man.
You got the whole spectrum. Yes.
I love all of them.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about what kids observe.
Everything
from their parents.
Everything. What I've learned, now Gabe being 22, he became who he is, not because of what I said, but by what I did. Like I truly believe. Now there are things I've told him that have stuck with him, but I mean, him and I've even had this conversation that he learned more by just watching me and how I operate in the world. And I think as parents, like, we have to always be cognizant of that. We can tell our kids whatever we want to tell them, right? But they are going to watch us.
Yes.
Like they watch everything we do. Like, and they know our moods. They know when, like even this weekend, like I was having an off week and it was just overwhelmed from everything. And my kids can sense I was off. So they can observe those things. But I think as parents, like our biggest duty is to just be good people, because our kids will then observe us being good people and do the same, I believe.
I would agree too. I know that there's so many thoughts today about, I believe there's so many thoughts today about how much to protect children, how much to expose the children, how much do we hide from children?
Yeah.
How much do we reveal to children? I think that as over generations, that's some of those mantras have changed. But what's your thoughts on, let's just say late teens and so forth? How much do you feel you protected Gabe as opposed to how much you feel you revealed to Gabe?
I think
about the world in general.
Yeah, I think I always try to be very revealing to him. Like I didn't hide things from him. Like I never want to be that parent because I say that, like, I don't want my kids to grow up and think everything's going to be handed to them. Like, if you get out in the world's going to kick you in the face. And I remember taking Gabe to one of our shithole rental properties when he was like 9 or 10 years old, like down in McKees Rocks. And we were there, like, painting one of the kitchen. And I said, and I brought him there for the reason, I said, this is the type of place you'll live if you don't bust your ass in school and become successful. That's because this is all you'll be able to afford. I said, you have to think about that. And I brought him, like, because he was always used to living in nice houses. I said, but your mom worked for that. I worked for that. Like, you got to do your own thing. And I never wanted to hide anything about the world from him. Like the world can be whatever you want it to be, but there is cruelty in the world. There is evil. There is bad people in the world. And I think trying to hide that from your kids is doing them a disservice. I think you have to prepare them for that.
Right.
You have to teach them about it and hope you can instill in them the right values, the right observational skill sets to look at the world and to understand. To me, the best skill anybody can learn in life is how to observe people and how to read a person, because that can tell you everything you need to know. I truly believe that. I think if you try and shelter your kids from the world and how it really operates, they're going to go out into the world eventually and not have the skills and the knowledge to to actually operate within the world they're in.
Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts on when the concept of helicopter parenting kind of started?
So our generation started that. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
You don't think that?
I definitely think Gen X became
Mm-hmm.
parents. And I think the mantra was, at least this is what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this is fact. The mantra became, we need to do more for our children than we were received. We need to provide more opportunity. We need to provide more safety, whatever the guise was.
Yeah, I agree.
More for our kids than we got.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I think at times that drove us to like make decisions that were literally out of our own minds.
Stupid.
Yeah. And helicopter parenting, I think, came from that ever protective, don't let our kids feel pain kind of mentality.
Participation trophies. That was the biggest, that was the stupidest thing that ever came out of helicopter parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about that.
We're still here today.
It is. And that's the end. I told the story a million times, but the first time Gabe got a second place trophy, I'm like, second place is the first loser. Like, that's great. Like, that's great. That means someone was better than you or worked harder than you.
Yeah.
Those are two variables you can change.
Yeah.
I said, but we don't celebrate for participation, right? That's not how the world works. Like, you don't get out into the world and just get a job because you're you and get raises because you participated. You know what? You showed up every day from 8 to 5. Like, you did what you're supposed to do. Here's more money. That's not how it works. Like, truly, it's not. Maybe there are some companies out there like that, but I will never run a company like that. I will always pay people what they're worth, their value, and prove to me your value, and you will make whatever your value is.
The value they bring to the hour.
Exactly.
It's not the hour.
Yeah,
you're not paid for the hour. You're paid for the value you bring.
Yeah, and it's like, and kids have to learn, like, and we've done a disservice. Like, our generation has. I truly believe that. Like, we're at fault. Because I mean, I found myself at certain times, like, being overly protective of especially my daughters. Well. But then I take a step back and it's like, well, wait a minute. No, like, I have to trust them. I have to trust that I've given them enough knowledge and skills to navigate the world that they're in right now.
I think the toughest thing for a parent, a loving parent, which I'm going to guess is 99.9% of all parents, I would hope, is that when they watch their child, especially when they're very young, have any kind of uncomfortableness or pain. It takes an adult mindset to step back for a second, evaluate the level of pain, and then say, okay, what is healthy and what is not, and then make appropriate decision. I can remember being very guilty. I wanted to make everything as easy as possible for my son growing up when he was very young. I wanted to, every obstacle he faced, I wanted to make things easier, putting things together. And I had to cognitively pull myself back and say, he's got to figure things out on his own.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to create a basket case here.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I think kids learn to pick your battles too. Like, there are certain things that I think some parents are too over the top when it comes to, like, not doing anything for their kids.
Free range parenting.
Right. Then there are also parents that just literally do everything for their parents. I will never judge another parents. Right. We all have different kids. Right. We all have different lifestyles. I just know what I believe. Like, I believe with my kids, like, I want them to learn to be self-sufficient and do things for themselves. Now, there will be times where I will help them with things. Right. Or maybe they're just, like, having an off day, and maybe I'll be more helpful on those days, right? Like, I'll do more things for them. But I also want to make sure that I'm not getting them accustomed to me waiting on them. Like, I'm not here to serve you. I'm here to parent you or guide you. Yes, like, I'm not going to solve your problems. Right. Like, I will help you think through a problem and work through a problem, but I'm not going to solve it for you unless you come to me and said, I've went through every option and I can't figure it out. There's been many times where Gabe has called me and we've just talked because he wanted to work through a problem with me. He didn't ask me to solve it.
Skill.
Correct.
Younger.
Correct.
Right.
He didn't ask me to solve it. He wanted to talk through the problem.
Amen.
And I said, as long, like, even last night we were talking because he's debating taking a gap year between college and law school. So we had a long discussion, and, it's your decision. Like, it's your decision. I said, a gap year can be very good or it can be very bad, and there's no in between. I said, you've got to make that decision. Though. You've got to think through it all. And I said, I will support your decision anyway. You're my son. I love you. And I know that any decision you come up with, it will be because you thought through it. And really, and he was, asking the right questions, saying the right thing. So, he, got off the phone last night and I was comfortable with whatever decision he makes. And then today he emailed Matt at the office for a letter of recommendation for law school. So I'm like, I don't know. Is he going? I have no idea. So I have to call him later and ask him, but it's it was a conversation that made me realize, okay, he knows he's okay. Like, he knows how to solve problems. He knows how to work through things. Like, he put a lot of thought into that decision. And it wasn't just because he wanted to take a year off.
Mm-hmm.
He had logical reasoning behind it. He felt like he hasn't been disciplined because it's his last semester of college. You know, he's not the fraternity president anymore. He wants to be able to build back disciplines before he goes into law school that requires that level of discipline, which I'm like, okay, I get it. I said, but that means you're going to take a year off and you're going to be working. And like, that means you're not going to, you know, text me every 2 weeks because you need money for gas or chicken and rice. Like, it's, you got to learn to support yourself. And I told him, I said, if you're going to get a job, don't just get any job. Get a job that will teach you a skill. I said, get into sales.
Absolutely.
Do sales.
Yeah.
Do sales for a year. That'll help you tremendously. So we'll see. But it's, again, I think that's what we need to do as parents. Like, teach our kids how to solve problems, not solve them for them.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to, for lack of a better phrase, at times teaching our children how to actually think.
Oh, 100%.
For themselves.
100%.
I mean, we've talked on this podcast so many times, especially on our long form shows, about how some of the more basic fundamentals of thinking and so forth and reasoning is not really taught in public school or private school, for that matter. It's just really not taught.
No.
It's really up to the parent to this maybe in this media drenched world to slow the process down for the child and get them to sit and contemplate and think. And I am worried that newer parents might not be taking that kind of time with kids to slow the mind down a little bit and get them to think through. You know, we used to have word problems in school. I hated them, but there was a group. Yeah, but naturally you would. but there certainly was a method behind the madness, the difficulty, the difficulty of it, to work through the issue.
Yeah, and I think parenting is a lot harder now. There's so much more information now. Like, and I couldn't imagine being a new parent today. Just how the world has changed. Like, I remember when I had Gabe, I was in law school. 24 years old, I was in law school. I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground. I didn't even know how to be a man. I'm like, oh shit, I have this little boy that I'm now responsible for. But there wasn't as many distractions as there are today. So I was able to manage it. And I feel like parenting now has just gotten not difficult. I think we are just more distracted as human beings. So I think it's harder for people to focus on the actual parenting side of things because there's so many other things pulling their attention. Job, you know, social media, the news, you know, what's going on in the world, like home prices. Can I buy a home? Can I afford this? Can I afford this? Like, there's so many things pulling on new parents. They can't really focus on actually just being a parent and giving the kids what they need, the knowledge they need, the experience they need, and the lessons they need to be taught. I think that's hard for some people. Yeah.
Well, it also could be, you know, if it's a circumstance where you really can't teach what you may have not been taught yourself.
Correct. Yes. You get in that perpetual cycle, right? If you, and that's, you know, and a lot of times people have to unlearn behaviors because if not, you're going to keep the same cycle going, right? If you have bad behaviors that you never learned otherwise, you teach your kids the bad behaviors and it just perpetuates that cycle. And I think somewhere you have to break that. You have to break that chain.
Yeah, and that's where I hope that we will slow down the pace of society, especially when it comes to kids. I am not the furthest thing from a child psychologist. I just observe a lot, and I see we really have, and I think a lot of the technology is great for kids. There's been so many positives. You know, I don't want to discount those either, but screen time is something.
It's something.
It's something to consider 100%. And to monitor and to talk about as an issue.
It is, and I think, you know, and I know I'm guilty of just letting them probably be on there longer than they should. That's something I've always struggled with because, you know, it is. It's easy. It is, and I find myself like, oh shit, like I've let them be on this, you know. But now, like, Ellie's older, you know, she's talking to her friends, and Melina's a little bit older now too, so she's, you know, when she's on it's at night, so it's not like all day long. But again, I think the other thing when it comes to parenting, like when we like the ease of it, like we have to teach kids that life is a little bit hard. Like you're not going to
get afraid to do that, Rocco.
Because again, I think our generation, to your point, people I talk to, people I know, friends, you know, acquaintances, when they all talk about like they want to give their kids a life they never had. It's like, cool, I get that, and I do too. But I also don't want to give my kids a warped sense of reality. right? Like I'm not gonna just, go do all this crazy shit for my kids, sacrificing myself. You know what I mean? Like I know a lot of people out there that'll buy their kids everything, right? Their kids want for nothing, but yet they don't have anything in retirement, or they're in debt otherwise. It's like, no, like you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself first, then take care of your kids, because you're teaching your kids a warped sense of reality, in my opinion.
I think so too. We tend to associate love oftentimes with doing things for people, which is pure. That often comes with a component of money.
Yeah, it does. I think, and that's a big problem. I think kids just want our time. Like that's really it. Like I don't think, like, it doesn't matter. Like they just want the time. Like for instance, like vacation. Like last year we went on this nice vacation to Mexico. This year I said we're going to Myrtle Beach. Kids couldn't care less where we went. It's just about being on vacation as a family. They don't care where we go. It's just about the time that I get away from the office and Laura and we get to spend time together, like all of us with Gabe. It's just, that's all they care about.
Right.
They're not saying like, no, we have to go back to Mexico. Like it was this plan. It's just, and I've learned that like, it's not about what I give them. It's the time I give them.
Yeah, and it's my whole life seems to circle back to old Jim Rohn quotes.
Yeah.
but he has a great one about that. He said the kids give us the lesson.
Yeah.
When they're newborn and when they're toddlers, what do they want? They want your attention and they want your time. They give us the lesson.
Yeah.
And then somehow when they get older, we somehow forget that lesson. And we bring money and we bring other salves to the equation.
Exactly right.
But it's right there. They're showing you as babies what they need from you. And it does not change. It is your time and your participation in their life.
Yeah. And it's true. And the other thing I'm learning too now is that kids have gotten older. Like, and again, I we were guilty of this, as a couple earlier. It's like, well, we'll spend time as a couple once the kids are older. Everything was devoted to the kids. And I know a lot of people that are like that. It's like, no. So
it's unhealthy.
Yeah. And I realized that, like, we didn't realize it for a while, right? It can be unhealthy. We've taken a step back and said, no, we have to spend time with each other away from the kids so they can understand what a relationship is.
Bingo.
And then that is the biggest piece, but then it also allows us to appreciate the time we do have with the kids.
That's the obvious. The second part you said, there's the obvious part that most people get when you say that. But the first part, it's what the kid is observing.
Correct.
And the importance of the relationship and the bond and the marriage and the family unit from the authoritative section, which is the parents. Yep. That's what's visible to the child.
Yeah, exactly. And that to me, I think kids need to see that. They need to see that. I truly believe that.
Yeah. I feel that for the most part that I will always give deferential treatment to a young parent because I believe that their heart is in the right place. How could you not love this creation?
Yeah.
Unless there's a mental issue, right?
Yeah.
So you start out in its purest form with that child. And I think oftentimes we just, as they get older, make things more complicated.
Yeah.
Than they have to be.
We definitely.
I know. I did.
And I think when you're a first time parent, like you make everything complicated. Like, I mean, I remember this story. This is when I think
the Binky story.
Yeah. Like when I told this before, but I think it's applicable now, but it's like, I think it was at Costco I think it was with Ellie when she was a baby.
Come here, Ellie.
And she dropped, it wasn't her Binky, it was her mama, which is this stuffed animal she has had since she's like a baby, and she will have it on her wedding dress when she gets married someday. Yeah. But there was this woman standing in line behind me who had like one of those baby Bjorns and was holding brand new newborn, like newborn. She was younger. Ellie was in the cart. Like we were, I'm like, she probably thinks I'm like this single dad with like not knowing how to take care of a kid. So Ellie's like in the thing and she throws her mama on the ground, and the woman picks it up and she's like, "Oh, do you want me to go wipe this off and wash it off?" And I'm like, I was like, no, it's fine. And I give it back to her, and Ellie grabs it and like puts it back in her mouth. She looks at me. I'm like, and I looked at her. I'm like, "That's your first child, right?" She's like, "Yeah, it is." I'm like, "You'll understand." I said, "You'll understand someday." And that was it. And it was just kind of like, we both chuckled a little bit. I think she thought it was a little bit crazy because I'm like, I just gave it back to her. But it's like your first kid, you're afraid of everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Elliot was my second kid.
Yeah.
Melina's my third. Melina, she does whatever the fuck she wants.
Yeah.
But it's like you as you learn what matters and what doesn't matter.
Right.
Like to me, it's like it's germs. She's not gonna fucking die. It's like it was on the ground for literally 2 seconds. 5-second rule, you're good. Like, and I don't even think she put the part that hit the ground in her mouth. So she's fine. She's 14 now. She's lasted. She's beautiful. She's amazing. She's amazing. So we're good. We're good. We're good.
Yeah. But your point earlier this week about the kids observe everything, it really made me think. Like I know many times if you told me that in conversation all throughout my adult life, I would say, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But was I really being cognitively aware of it all the time? And most parents, just because of the push and pulls on them daily, probably aren't.
Yeah.
But I think as a parent, you can recover from a bad outburst here or there, or these moments where you weren't at your best. It's the repetitive things that are hard to unwind. The repetitive, quote unquote, difficult behavior you're showing your children. Yeah. It's hard to recover from.
Yeah, and you got to, and again, like I'm cognizant when I have those bad days, and I like always like even this weekend, like had like one of those weekends, and I remember taking Ellie to school Monday morning. I was like, hey, like just so you know, like I'm good. Like I was just stressed out this week. I said, but I'm good now, and like I just explained to her like it was just a weekend where I was a little bit overwhelmed, and it caused me to not be myself, and she knows when I'm not myself. So, and then we were fine. Like I explained to her and everything was good, but it's like, I was cognizant enough to know that she noticed, and Laura made me know that she noticed that I'm off. So I had that conversation with her. And I think we have to, because kids they observe everything. Like literally things you're not even thinking about, they're observing. That's like when Gabe, like when he was 14, that one time I picked him up from like, he was at the ice cream place with these girls. And like, he gets in the car, and I'm like joking with him. I'm like, so I said, so did you pay for all the girls? Like it was like him and like 2 or 3 girls that were his friends. And his immediate response was, of course I did. That's what a man does. And like I never told him that, but he always saw that I would do that, like with just female friends or like Laura. Like I would never let people pay. Like it was just my thing. And and that's when I'm like, that was the moment as a parent, because he was 14.
Registered. Yeah.
I'm like, fuck. Like he's watching everything. And that's when I was just like, okay, I got to be very cognizant, especially for him, because I'm a man. He's growing into a man. Like he's going to emulate me.
Yeah.
And I have to make sure that I'm not perfect, farthest thing from, but I have to show him the way to navigate in the world as a man. And just that's by how I navigate. And then just making sure I'm being a good person, doing the right thing, and showing him the right behaviors to exhibit. It's a heavy burden, I believe.
Oh, there's no question. I would surmise that most children end up becoming a good portion of who their parents are.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
I remember. I mean, this is a gut for me personally. It's a gut wrenching conversation to have, a memory to have. I had one of my best friends was a smoker since he was like 10. And, he'd be sneaking whiskey drinks here and there because it was cool. And, and I was a little intimidated by that because my parents both didn't smoke and we were in a dry house.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were the opposite of that. Like I was just horrified by those quote unquote vices because I wasn't around them.
Yeah.
I was curious, but I wasn't around them. But I remember him saying, I said, dude, when did you start smoking?
Yeah.
I remember he said, I think, my second year of Little League. And I'm like,
second year of Little League?
I'm like 10. I mean, he's 10. Yeah. Like how? Like, why? Because to me, it was just unfathomable.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And he said, well, what do you think I saw every day from both of my parents all day, every day? Of course I smoked. It's all I knew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I mean, it's like you can tell them in school that smoking's bad, stay away from cigarettes, stay away from tobacco, but it really comes down to that influence in that house.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, like, you can put me in a room with 10 kids and 10 parents, and I can watch the kids and tell who their parent is. Like kids are the ultimate reflection of us. Like true. Like if you think about, like really think through that, like think about younger kids. I would say probably like between 8 and 18, like that time frame. I said, you can think about kids, and then think about the parents. those kids are mirrors of the parents. Maybe not every, but the majority of the way they operate, the way they act, the way they talk, the way they interact with other people is how their parents do.
Right. And
it's funny because most people are like, that's not how I act. It's like, well, I know you, I know them. It's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And it truly is. Like if you look at kids, I mean, I've tried to disprove myself. Like just people I know that have kids. That I know the kids well enough to I could say, okay, I know who your parents are, I know who the kids are, and they exhibit the same traits.
Yeah, how could you not? I mean, that's just part. I mean, it's just, but they are like little. When they say kids are sponges, I mean, it's just obvious. Now let's just change the direction a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about leadership in regards to like running a company and so forth, or any or any organization you might be. Multi-level organization where there's, positions of influence and authority and so forth. I would think for sure we look to our leaders for better or worse in this society for guidance, but also for example, oftentimes.
Yeah.
And that I think is thought about even less sometimes than parents being observed by their kids.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, trust me. Like it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Like leading people, it is the hardest thing I've ever done. And you're right. Like it's like but then you have to be an example, right? And I think people look to you, but then sometimes people still do what the fuck they want. Like
they're adults now,
right? Well, right. And again, like I'm fortunate enough that I have 10 now, like 10 amazing people that work with me.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people.
No, you have amazing people working for you.
I do.
All welcome.
Yeah, no, I do. So it's like I don't feel that burden so much, but the challenge of leadership has just gotten so exponentially hard.
Let's talk about that. So let me ask you this: did you feel areas of leadership in your corporate career? Were there moments where you organizationally where there's leadership issues?
Yeah, I mean, I was running the legal department, which was a very small department, but it was, a couple people, very small department. But I was part of the C-level suite, so I was part of the executive team.
Okay,
so like we had this trip every year. It was like the top 50 executives in the world, like the global company would have these. So I was part of that team.
Okay,
but I was still the reason why I left was like I was the lawyer. Like no one really gave a shit.
Right.
It's like where's the cell? Shut the fuck up.
Right.
So it's like I was a leader by title, but I didn't have the influence that I believed a leader should have in my position.
Okay, so that was kind of like my next question. So your experience of leadership was under that circumstance.
Yeah.
And I want you to compare that circumstance to starting your own business and then the demands on leadership there.
It's so hard.
It's different, right?
It's so hard.
It's so different.
It's so different. It's because corporate America, it was like, it wasn't my baby, right? It was just, I was part of a team.
Well, you're defined by others there.
I was defined by others. Yeah. Other people dictated my life. Like this is my baby now. And I also have 10 families that I'm responsible for now, which I take that burden very.
And not all business owners do.
Yeah.
That's a very commendable way to look at it, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's anything special. I just think that's how I view the world. Like it truly is.
Understood.
Like I care about my people, and I want to make sure they're taken care of before I'm taken care of. But the hardest part of it is learning how to communicate. Because what I'm realizing now is that we have 10 people, and I'll give you an example. If I said I could say I like you 3 different ways. I can say I like you, or I like you. That's 3 different meanings. Those 3 words said, and that's what I deal with every day. Like literally information from different people. They could be literally the same words, but they all have different meanings. And that's for me to understand what is actually being said. No one's doing it intentionally. It's just I have to understand how people talk, how they communicate, what this really means. Are there underlying things?
How it's landing. It all lands differently to everybody.
Yeah, it is like. There are days, I mean, I'm being 100% like open kimono now. There are days where I'm just sitting in my office. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, I'm just sitting there like, I don't know. Like, I have a bunch of work to do. I have all these people here. Like, they think I know what I'm doing. And some days I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But then you have
he does.
But there are those moments where you feel like a deer in like leadership sometimes feels like a deer in headlights.
Right.
where I'm like, there's all this stuff going on out there. And I'm like, I just want to sit here and just not deal with it right now. And it's not bad stuff. It's just stuff.
Do you think as the firm grows, though, do you think that some of those challenges become a little easier once you have people in positions in the company longer and you get to know their communication skill, how things land, their background?
Yes.
You watch them maneuver. You understand their persona.
Yes. And there is an ease of that now. And I think, like, I'm a very observant person. I just don't say a lot. I think sometimes, the people, that are in the firm don't realize I observe as much as I do. Not that they're doing anything bad. It's just, I'm just very observant of what's going on and like what's being said and what's happening. And
well, you studied modeling, right?
Yeah. Like I'm very
programming and all that, NLP, all that.
And so I always just, let things play out.
Right.
And I think that's something that's, the longer you work with people, the more you understand their behavior, the more you understand, if someone does X, it's really because of Y. But when they first do, actually think it's just because of X.
Right.
But there's something else really going on. And you
100%.
You observe it long enough, then you understand it. So that's why I try not to react to situations immediately. I want to let them happen and see how it plays out. And maybe let it happen a couple times. Because if this is a recurring situation, or a recurring discussion that people are having, or a recurring debate that we're having in the office, I want to let it happen a few times. I want to understand really what's going on behind the scenes.
Sure.
And that's helped me from a leadership perspective. Instead of being reactionary to everything, I'm more observant.
Okay.
And pensive in my response.
What do you think is a misconception about your leadership style with your people? I'm putting you on the spot.
I mean, there's probably a fucking million misconceptions.
Give me one of them.
For my leadership style, I think that's a good question. I don't know. Like, I don't know, because I feel like I'm the most laid back person there is, but yet I feel like people think I'm like this hard ass mad person that's like, I'm like, no, I'm just hungry. Like, I'm hangry. Like, I'm hangry. But it's, I mean, I don't know. That's a good question, because I think. I struggle with that, right? I struggle with, like, what do they actually think? Like, I don't know.
Do leaders think enough about how they're being perceived, or do they perceive? What's your thoughts on that?
I think good leaders are always thinking about what their people see. I think bad leaders don't give a shit. I think bad leaders think they have it all figured out. I think bad leaders think their people's opinions don't matter.
Okay.
Because again, I'm constantly worried. In my mind, my people come first, right? Like, truly they do. Like, I want to make sure they're taken care of and they're happy and they're thriving. And then, I will take on the shit for them. Like, I will take on the stress to make their life, sometimes to a fault. Like, sometimes I've done it to a fault, and I've been told that multiple times, but it's just my role until someone teaches me otherwise.
Is it safe to say that you care more about how your leadership style and your interaction with them is landing on their end more? You care more about that than what you care to project as your defined leadership style?
Yeah, because what I project and what lands, it matters what lands. I can project whatever I want.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's how it lands, right? So I
think it's
more
reversed
about
a lot for a lot of people, though.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I agree with that. Because again, like I said, leadership is hard. Like, I don't think people understand, like, until you really get into the trenches, and like you could be a leader, like, in position, but until you're really in the trenches and you've rolled up your sleeves and done the hard shit, like, you don't understand. It's hard. It is literally the hardest. I've taken bar exams. I've raised kids. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, leading people.
Certainly.
But I love it. Like, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like, it's a privilege to me. Like, I feel like it's a privilege to get to lead these people, but it's so hard.
Okay. Well, okay. What's the most difficult aspect of leadership that you've encountered?
The most difficult? I mean,
the thing that keeps you up at night, if anything keeps you up at night, but the thing that
everything keeps me up at night.
The thing that you found most difficult being a leader of this corporation.
Keeping the culture. The culture is important to me.
Wow. Okay.
Like, that's the thing that, because again, like, it's, when you have 2 people, it's easy. When you have 4 people, it's still easy. When you have 11 people, now there's 100 and some different ways to communicate.
Mhm.
And so that stresses me, it overwhelms me, because people can misconstrue things, misinterpret things that can impact the culture of an organization without any intention of doing that. And so that's the thing that keeps me up the most, is just watching interactions and listening to people talk and understanding, like, is this impacting the culture? Like that, because that to me, like clients, we have great clients. I can deal with them. The legal stuff I can deal with. The financials, developing business, I can deal with that. The culture, it's not. It takes 11 people,
Right,
to handle a culture. I'm only one, right? I can only do so much. So that's the thing that keeps me up the most, because I don't have full control over it.
okay.
And there's probably a lot that keeps me. There's a lot that keeps me up, but that is definitely one that is a constant. Not worry. I don't want to say worry. It's just constantly at the forefront of my mind, because it's so important to me. That the culture matters.
I would think too, as you build an organization, it's so vitally important that whoever you put in a management staff, as you grow, understands that their management style, which will all be a little different, because there'll be some uniqueness in there, which you get, but the overall essence of that style needs to reflect the culture. And I think that is lost in a lot of big organizations. I can distinctly remember that some of the bigger organizations that I worked for in decades prior, that management style was so vastly different from even managers within the same big department.
Oh yeah.
That like manager A's group of 8 people have a view of X company one way.
Yeah.
In the same room, there's manager B, his 8 people have a view of X company completely different, because the manager's style is basically what people actually see for the organization. And I think sometimes corporations do not manage their managers well enough.
No, in corporate America, it's terrible. Like I know, I saw it. I see it with clients of mine that are corporations. It's very hard, because management is hard. Like and I think in organizations, I think Simon Sinek does that one talk where he talks about like high performing teams, right? So a group of people is a team, right? If you're managing people, that's a team. And then he talks about the Navy SEALs, and he says that the people they want on their team is the one they can trust with their wife. And it's like, so the whole point is like, trust is the main thing. You don't have to be the strongest, the biggest, the fastest, but I have to be able to trust you.
Right.
And that's where I think in large organizations, right, people have a hard time trusting one another, because there's just so much corporate politics.
Is that bad hiring, bad promotion, or do you think it's just what festers with humans over when they're put in bulk?
All of that. I think it can be bad hiring. I think it can be bad organizational dynamics. I think it's just sometimes it's human nature. Like, again, when people take offense to certain things or take everything personal, I think it's a combination of all of that. And every organization is different. Every level within an organization is different. But I've learned that truly, like, trust is the main variable that can make or break an organization. Like, if you listen to any speaker on teams and high performing teams in high functioning organizations, the centerpiece of it all in leadership is trust and empathy. Like, if leaders are empathetic and trustworthy, those organizations tend to thrive, because people feel safe. Like, when they can trust leadership, that's part of my TED talk, right? It's organizations have a leader that people believe they can trust. They feel safe, and they tend to be more productive and creative, because they don't fear consequences. Because there's a level of trust there. They trust the leadership so much that they're not going to fear of making a mistake. And that's what I strive to do in our organization. And I think every company should strive to do is build that trust within the team. That's how you build a high functioning, highly profitable organization.
When you hear the term open door policy,
okay,
do you think that still means what it did 40 years ago when it became in vogue in the 80s?
Well, I was 5. So what did it mean back then?
In the 90s too.
What did it mean back then?
Well, I remember my years in corporate in the 80s and 90s, there seemed to be a movement toward breaking down barriers between management and staff. taking doors off of offices. I don't know how much that
Right.
works in the law field.
My door's always actually open.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, see-through windows
Mhm.
for walls and so forth, and just trying to break down the structure, the formality that might have been inherent in corporate America, 50 years ago. And they created what I was explaining as an open door policy, that any employer has open line of communication with their manager, which we all know in reality wasn't always the case. Probably couldn't be in every instance. But do you still feel, from what you see when you go see corporate clients and you're still out there, do you still feel that corporate America is still that way, or does it look different now? Is even more open? I don't know.
Well, I think there's still that push to have that in place, right? And I think in some organizations it's way more open. Sometimes more open than it should be.
Okay.
Right? Like some organizations
legal liability.
Liability, yeah, where like people are too open about certain things and going to the wrong people, right? Like okay. So I think like I believe in open communication policy. Like we have a no BS policy in the office. Okay. It's like, hey, if you have an issue with something or someone, you have till 5 o'clock that day to address it with them or come to me to solve it. If you don't do either of those, then it's not an issue. Then get over it and move on. Like we're still working through, we implemented it, but we haven't fully followed it 100% yet. Like we've all been guilty of not following it. But we try and have an open communication policy, right? That's the whole point. But there's also now, like, we have some chains of command. Like we have to, just because we're so busy. Like Jasmine put time on my calendar now to have like office hours, because yes, I want anybody to come whenever they need to, but she had to like start managing my schedule in a way like, hey, like if you keep popping in during the day, it's going to disrupt the rest of the stuff. Now I'm still able to do that and people can, but it's like, if you can, and if you have a bunch of stuff to discuss with me, let's just do it during this window, 8 to 9 in the morning.
Right.
Let's hammer it, because I'm not involved in anything. I haven't gotten to it. It's being efficient. So yeah, we still have open door, open communication, but combine that with the efficiency we're trying to build. So it makes it challenging. It does.
Yeah, and I asked the question because I've not been in corporate for 20 years, but I remember my first career was at a company called RPS, which became FedEx Ground years later. But the parent company was Roadway Services, a big trucking company. Very old school corporate, very fundamental, very highly structured. And that culture was brought into this new venture, RPS. So, but you could see they were trying to get with it, the 80s, they were trying to. And I saw the formality of the big offices and the tall doors and all that. But I had a manager, Mary Coulter. She was actually like 2 levels up from where I was, but she always had her door open all the time. And she made it aware that she was accessible. Yeah. And I think I learned at an early age that permeated throughout the entire 200 person department. I mean, like so it was really interesting that her demeanor and the way that she handled her business there, we would observe that and find a level of comfort there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think about myself, because my door is always open unless I'm on a call or like I'm in a meeting that just, it's just because everything's so close. Like we're talking loud. We don't want it to permeate through the office, or like I don't want to be distracted by other people's conversations. We'll shut the door if we're having a meeting. But 90% of the day, my door is open. But I'm also realizing, the more I just observe, is that I don't know if people are afraid to talk to me about certain things, or they kind of put this. They have this perspective of me that I'm the managing partner, the guy in the corner office. I shouldn't go to him with these things, or like I don't want to go to him with this stuff.
That could be dangerous.
It definitely worries me sometimes. I'm like, I'm going to be here for anybody, whatever you need. But sometimes I feel like they won't always come to me.
So let's unwind that. Do you think it's partially because of the field that you're in? It could be your professional presence. What is it? A combination of those things?
I mean, I don't know. Like I try and dissect it. So I'm like, I feel like I'm pretty much the most laid back person in this office. Like I'm pretty happy-go-lucky most days.
Has to be the field, though. I mean, everything you're saying is true. I know you on a personal level.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. It's kind of ironic. When you see him in action as an attorney, you step back and go, oh, I didn't see that side of him, because that's when you go into lawyer mode, which is different. It's different, but you're certainly approachable. I just wonder if it has more to do with the field that you're in.
Yeah, I think people ought, if you're a lawyer, so they automatically you check this one box, right? and it's like they look
You
at me.
guys checking boxes again.
But that's what I think happens, and maybe subconsciously, right? It might be something subconsciously, like they just think, even when potential new clients call, like they have this thought of what the conversation is going to be like. Then when it's completely the opposite, they're shocked. They can't believe it. So
that's powerful, though.
And I think people like that in our office, like even today, we were joking at lunch. We were talking about being pretentious, and our new receptionist, Sierra, she's like, "Oh, before I met you, like I thought you were going to be super pretentious." And I'm like, "What?" But then she was like, when you came in, when I came in the interview, I told you that I had a bunch of questions for you, and I was like, "Oh, I love questions," and it was like gave her some ease in that situation. I'm like, man, like why do people think I'm so pretentious? Like literally, I'm like the most like I like certain nice things. It doesn't make me pretentious. Like
right.
I have a sign on my desk that says 0 fucks given.
Right.
Like, I don't think that's pretentious. I mean, I feel like I have like action figures in my office.
It does speak to, it's interesting. You talked about, we have preconceived notions about people in all walks of life, but this speaks loudly to that, and we so get wrapped up into our perceptions of how things are, how they may be, and how am I going to interact with that? It's a mind screw.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of preconceived notions that come in people's interactions with me.
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, like just take a step back. Like literally, I grew up in Newcastle. Like I'm still the same dude I was when I was 10 years old. I'm just older, grayer, fatter, like it's more laid back. Like that's the way I look. It's almost comical to me because I know I'm not that way. And when people think that, it just makes me curious. Like, I'm like, why? Like, why? And people say, "Oh, because you were nice." It's like I feel like a bullshit excuse.
Okay, well, this is okay. So I'll give you a little take. So I have always, because I met Rocco in 2018, 19, something
19.
Like that.
It was 2019. Right after I published the book.
Right, that's exactly right. And so I know the Rocco that I know is definitely different than the perception of a lot of people that we mutually know have of you.
Which is fucking crazy.
It's nuts. It's totally nuts. But I look back at that and I think there's a lot of things that play into that. One, in society today, we associate imagery a lot with perception of personality.
Yeah.
So if he dresses exceptionally sharp, wears a nice watch, drives a nice vehicle, that person to some people may not really be approachable in their mind because they've built this up in their mind that somehow. But I think that's very, very common. You might not be able to see it because you're living it,
I guess.
But you step back away from it. I think that's part of the issue, and it goes to the field as well too. You see a successful attorney. Same thing with doctors. I mean, I think the average person does not feel that their doctor's really approachable.
No, I agree.
We put them up here.
You're 100% right. But it's like it cracks me up because I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I'm the dude that wears literally polo teddy bear pajama pants. I had these pajama pants literally since I met my wife.
That might be an overshare,
but no, but like they're super comfortable. But I've literally had those pants for 20 years.
Oh yeah, and the thing that does puzzle me with this is because you do these really crazy things, like you fall in tanks of water. I mean, you do dance competitions. I mean, there's nothing you won't try.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
and I wouldn't think that is behavior that would let someone believe that person's not approachable. So I kind of get befuddled by it at times too. But
I'm just like, I don't like literally, man. Like I don't understand it. Like, I mean,
but we do as humans. I think we elevate personas and perceive personas.
But what's interesting though, like I've tried to, because I've dealt with like athletes and celebrities in my career. Yeah. And I think because I don't do that, I'm able to develop a relationship so much deeper and quicker with people.
Certainly,
because I don't put them on. I don't think a certain way about them. I mean, like, you're a human just like me. Yes. No better, no worse. Let's just have a discussion. I think people, when you approach, and I think that people would get so much farther with me if they just approach me like I'm just like them, and like like let's shoot the shit, no problem. Like just have a conversation.
I learned I went through about a year of being starstruck. and the guitar,
Well, yeah, I mean, look,
and the
I mean,
guitar,
you
and the
have all
guitars
these-
in the
these
beginning,
stars.
and then after a
I'd be
while,
starstruck by all
but
these
after a
people.
while, though, once you realize they are just really not too different from you, and they appreciate that. They always appreciated that so much when I would talk to them, about anything but music or anything about, just want to talk to them on a human level, because in the essence, it's like, and many of them told me, look, we're all like really just the same. I just was afforded different opportunities that I ran with.
Yeah, like I would literally.
So many said that. I mean, like,
I would literally love that if people just came in my office and just asked me about like normal shit, like my normal day to day, like and not like think they have to act a certain way or
perception,
or like only ask me certain questions. I'm like, how about like whatever's on your mind, let's just chat. Like I like to talk to people. You want to know what I had for breakfast? I'll fucking tell you. An A-wrap. Make it myself every day. Same as every morning. It's in my bag, chicken and rice. Boom, done. But I'm just saying, like, I think people have this impression, and then
it's the field.
But the impression dictates behavior.
Yes.
And that's where people get caught up. And they don't realize it. Like,
oh man.
So people like, they'll say like, oh, like, if I meet somebody and they think I'm a certain way, like, oh, I never guessed like something. Well, you had an impression of me that dictated your behavior. Think about how farther along our relationship would be had you not had that impression dictate your behavior.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's where I get caught up.
Well, think about really high profile celebrities, how incredibly put off they are. You really can't blame them. I mean, they're probably not able to have many quote unquote real conversations with new people because everybody's got, this perception of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a problem. Definitely. I think it's probably a struggle for them.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a struggle, but again, it comes down to, if we would simply be willing to take a deep breath, think before we speak, and just observe a little bit. Yeah. Look at the landscape, watch how someone carries themselves, and you realize your perception of them could be really off.
Right.
Really off.
Right.
And you could come to that conclusion yourself if you gave yourself those couple extra moments.
Yeah. I mean, I found myself doing that, like when I'm in situations where like dealing with other parties, or like I may have an impression of a lawyer I'm going to deal with. But I always have to like reframe myself. Like I'll find myself like dealing with, I'm like getting ready for a phone call and thinking about what impression I have of this lawyer or this person I'm going to speak to. But then I always have to like snap out of it and say, no, just clean slate, see what it is. And it's like, and when I do
that's
that,
a skill.
Well, but it's interesting because like this one situation I'm dealing with, I had an impression of the lawyer from another lawyer that was dealing with this person. Something like, this dude's going to be a fucking dickhead. It's going to make this so difficult. And I remember having the first phone call with this guy, and I went into it. I said, clean slate, like nicest dude, like admitted his client was an idiot. Like, yeah, my client's completely unreasonable. I'm like, okay, let's find a way to sort this out. But I had to like go into it with that clean, because if I would have went into it with the perception I had, I would have went into attack mode.
Oh yeah.
Like I would have said, like, I'm going to fucking beat you down, and then nothing would have got done. But because I just said, let me go into it, let this person talk and just feel them out for 30 seconds, totally changed everything in that conversation.
Yeah. I definitely believe that. And I think that's a skill set. I think if you can turn what you just described was you could turn on a dime. You knew you had this perception, this potentially negative perception.
Yeah.
But you were able to cognitively stop before you engaged and corrected your mindset.
Yeah.
That is a skill I'm guessing a lot of folks are not running around with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a skill. It's something I've always done. Like, I guess it is. I think it's just being self-aware.
Very much so.
It's just being self-aware of, okay, how can this go?
We all can do that. It's
yeah.
just we choose to be so up in our feelings or also at times though, we delude ourselves to believe things about people because we thought these negative feelings for so long, they become fact in our head. If you think someone is a jerk and you never met them, but you think someone's a jerk, and then 2 years later you finally meet them, it's going to be hard to stop on down and say, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Let me go into this with an open mind. No, you think this person's a jerk.
Yeah, right.
And he may end up being a jerk in the end because your interaction might suck.
Because your interaction might make the person
right.
Exactly. Because I always say the way people act is a reflection of me.
Yeah.
Like a lot of, maybe not always, but a lot of it is
in most
right?
instances.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm going to mirror how you're acting. If you treat me like kindly, I will treat you kindly.
Right.
And I always try and remember that when I'm going into a situation and say, you know, like, let me be overly nice to this person and disarm them. And that works.
It's almost like a magic trick, man. And it
really is.
When you learn that in sales. If you have any success in sales, you will learn this even when you're not paying attention. The term "kill them with kindness" I always thought was kind of corny, but ultimately, it's true. If you go over the top and you be as gracious as possible, you literally put that person potentially on their heels.
100%.
And their next reaction to you almost is usually positive.
Yeah, because people, I believe, human nature to want to feel heard and understood. And if you just like listen to the person and they feel like you've actually heard what they're saying and you understand it, changes the conversation on a dime. Like if you get into a heated discussion with someone, you take a step back and just flip it by treating them kindly and letting them know that you hear what they're saying and you understand and you get it. Like it because then they almost feel like an asshole acting like that. It disarms them completely, and you're not doing it with nefarious intent. You're just doing it because that's just the way to diffuse the situation. And it is a skill set. It's being able to recognize when you need to use that.
Yeah, I mean, you could even if you want to be more coy about it, you can say it's a strategy. It's a communication strategy. I mean, there's a story, and I'm probably going to butcher the story, but it's about Ben Franklin and how he dealt with one of his quote unquote intellectual enemies.
Okay.
Ben Franklin didn't convey this guy was his enemy, but he had someone in his sphere that really conveyed to people that he didn't like Ben Franklin. So Ben Franklin went to him, and his tactic was he asked to borrow a book that he heard this gentleman give a little oral dissertation on.
Okay.
He said, "Hey, do you happen to have this book by so-and-so? I'd like to read it." He asked the guy to do him a favor.
Yeah.
But in a roundabout way was complimented him intellectually.
Yeah.
You see, so now the guy is thinking, well, he's asking me to do him a favor and for me to share in this mutual interest in this author and this book. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I understand being kind to people that, you perceive to be your adversary, but I mean, to get them to engage with you in that capacity where they're actually doing you a favor.
Yeah. I mean, disarming people.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
It is. And there's a lot of strategies like that you can use. And it comes down to the art of communication, right? I think to be really skilled in any profession, you have to understand how to communicate with people, in verbally and non-verbally, and how to actually read a person. Because too many people go into a situation to talk. I try to go into a situation to listen. And respond.
I think you have to.
But a lot of people, you don't understand. Like, people come out of the gates, like, they know what they're going to say, and they're going to fucking get it out.
Oh yeah,
like they're going to get it out.
I do a podcast, man.
I
mean, are you kidding
me?
I
have,
and a lot of them get it out. Get it out indeed too.
They will get it out.
No, we want them to get it out too. It's just they're not the most effective way to communicate.
But they're not right. They're not even communicating. They're not in the conversation.
They're an orator at that point.
Correct. And to me, a conversation is a two-way street. And you have to understand what's going on and what's being said. And because a lot of times I'll find people that I'm talking with, I know what they're going to say before they say it. And so I try and throw a curveball. And they still said they're going to say, I'm like, that doesn't even answer what I just asked you. Because you had it in your head. You know how you can see in a person's face.
Never heard a question.
When they know what they're going to, it comes to them like, I know what I want to say. And that's it. And it's like, boom, they know what they're going to say. And I see that look, and I just go, let's go over here and see what happens. And then they'll still come back. And I'm like, you weren't listening. That's how I know if someone's listening or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. It's a fun thing to just observe people.
Yeah. I mean, I can just talk from this 5 years of doing this. When I look back at the early shows, some of them I cringe because I have nerves and I'm gabbing away at things that are not even consequential, and I'm missing so much because I'm not really. And I knew better. I've done enough self-development. I've done enough communication skills training. I knew better to listen better. But of course, new venture.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
But you learn if you pay attention long enough. And it's amazing if you sit back and if you let the other person talk, get it all out, and even sometimes just wait another second, just a little extra pregnant pause in there. a lot will be revealed.
Listen more than you speak, man. One of my early mentors told me that. Listen more than you speak. He said, we were talking about like the practice of law. He said, just let people talk. They will tell you things they shouldn't tell you.
Right.
And I'm like, huh. And it's that silence. People hate silence, right? It's uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. So if you just sit there and just look at them, they'll keep talking. And they'll say shit they probably shouldn't have said. And you'll really... And
it works on podcasting too, let me tell you.
That's how you get to the bottom of situations, truly. Like, just... I'm not going to try that with my kids. I'm not thinking about it. Like, well, tell me more. And just look at them and see what they say. Who did it? And just sit. They're probably listening, so I can't say that.
Oh, the pause is awesome.
Yes.
All right, partner. Great chat.
Yeah, this was a fun one, man.
We're going to do it again next week. All right, friends. Man. Thank you. And thanks for all the kindness.
Yes.
Reach out any questions you want, and be good to each other.
Right? Yes, definitely.
We'll see you.
I turned